Okay, for this first layout, I'm just going to be using these 3 pieces of paper here and this photo of me when I was younger. I do have a white border around it from my printer. If yours doesn't print that, feel free to add that if you'd like, but it's not necessary. I just like the way it looks. So to start with, we're going to cut off the manufacturing strip that was at the bottom of this heart paper here. So this was attached here. I went ahead and cut that off. We're going to use that as well. This is going to be our background paper. And we're going to cut off a 2.5-inch piece of this floral. So I'm going to take my ruler. We're going to measure 2.5 inches. And I'm going to mark it lightly with my pencil just so that I can see at the top and bottom. Now, if you don't want to worry about having to erase this mark, you could put this on the back of the paper, but I don't mind erasing. And I kind of like to see the pattern when I'm cutting. Okay, so we're gonna draw a nice line with pencil. Grab our scissors. If you have a trimmer, this would be a great one to use the trimmer on, but I'm just going to use my very sharp scissors and cut along that line. This does not have to be a perfect line. Do not panic if you go slightly off, because we are going to cover up the seam between this paper and the background paper with our border strip. That is one of those little tricks that I like to use, because we're going to cover this up right here, and that's going to cover up any deficits in our cutting. Okay, so we're going to get that taped down with my double-sided tape. And I do use a lot of tape for one simple reason. I want these layouts to last for many years. And I have found in the past, if you don't use plenty of adhesive, they will sometimes start to fall apart. So I do use plenty of adhesive. I would leave it up to you as to how much you would prefer to use. Whatever you're comfortable with is fine. I'm going to line that up on the edge and place it down. There we go. Now we've got this border strip to add here. And I'm going to line it up so that we have a solid row of hearts here, just because I like the way that that looks. So I'm going to tape that down. There we go. If you have any tape kind of hanging over the edge, you can go ahead and just smooth it so that it doesn't stick out too much. Mine's not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to lay that down. There we go. And now that I've got my basic design here, I'm going to bring my photo back and decide where I want it to go. I generally try to put my photo either near the top. If this is a single photo layout, we will have multi-photo layouts coming. But to start with, when you do a single photo layout, I like to either put it near the top, near the bottom, or off to one side. You can put it dead center if you would like to. Just whatever feels right to you is absolutely fine. I'm going to put mine slightly toward the top, so I have a little bit of room here for my title. I'm going to mat this photo first on The same paper we used here that creates a little bit of cohesion and brings those same colors back into toward the photo as well as outside the photo. Let's see, I think that looks good here. I'm just going to go ahead and tape that down and then cut around it with my scissors. I don't worry about perfect lines because perfection is not required in this hobby. As long as it looks good to you, I think that's good enough. If you have a trimmer and you would prefer a perfectly straight line, absolutely go ahead and use your trimmer. Just kind of assume that. I'm not going to say it every time, but just kind of assume that if you have a trimmer and you would prefer to have a perfectly straight line, absolutely go right ahead and do that. So now we've got our photo backed with one piece of paper. We're going to use this green as well. And that's going to make our photo stand out. I always want the photo to stand out on my layouts. Want it to have the most attention possible. So I'm going to, yes, tape that down. And same as before, just cut out another photo mat. You can put as many layers behind your photo as you like. I generally do at least 2, but most of the time 3. And especially on a very basic layout like this, I think it's a great way to draw attention to your photo. So now we've got our photo cut out in this nice border. And then I'm going to bring in some of the black ribbon that was sent in my kit. And I'm just going to cut off a piece of it. And just kind of sort of measure a little bit longer than my photo. Again, this part doesn't have to be perfect either. Just cut as straight a line as you can. Now on one side of the ribbon, I'm going to straighten it out a little bit because we're going to do a fishtail. So you're just going to cut in the center as straight as much, and then in from each corner to the center. Okay, so this side, same thing. So now I've got this really nice little fishtail on this end, and we're going to tape this down just under our photo, like that. I think I'm going to try to straighten up this side just a little bit because it's not lining up very good with that border strip. There we go. If you would prefer to clean up as you go, feel free to do so. I tend to be a little bit messy with my scrapbooking, but I'll keep it off camera so you don't have to look at it. Okay. Add some tape. What I'm going to do is I like that this has a nice grid look to it, this background, because it makes it easier to lay something like this fairly straight. If you are concerned about getting it perfectly straight, you can use your T-square ruler. But I don't usually worry about things like that, and just try to go with it. Okay. So now I'm going to put my photo right here. And I am only going to add tape at the very bottom and the very top because I plan on tucking something in on the side. If you were going to be tucking something in at the bottom or the top, then you could move the tape in a little bit to give yourself some space. I'm just going to line that up best I can and put that down. So now what am I going to be tucking in? I'm going to be tucking in a tag. I have this tag from the ephemera pack, and it's going to slide behind the green layer, just like this. Okay? Now, if you would like to, you can put some journaling on the back of this. I may do that later because this is not going to be taped down. I'm just going to slide it in there and leave it. But if you would like to tape that down, you could. It's really not going to move very much in your album being stuck behind the photo. Also, in tags, I do like a piece of twine or ribbon. So I'm again going to go to my black ribbon, but this time I'm just going to cut off a small piece, a thin strip of it from the side here. I'm just going to cut the ends at an angle, just because it's a little bit more interesting. Again, this doesn't have to be perfectly cut because it's going to be folded over, so you're not really going to be able to tell if it was perfect or not. Just pop that through my tag. And I am going to put a little piece of tape on the back of this just so that the ribbon will stay in place. Down, put the tape on top. All right. So now your ribbon will stay in place, and we can just tuck this tag here. Creating layers is going to give your layout a little bit more depth and a little bit more interest. So that's why we layer things on top and below. Next, I'm going to pull in some ephemera pieces that I've picked out. I'm going to use this nice little scalloped piece here. This is the lighter pink one. And I'm just going to tuck it underneath of my ribbon. There we go. So that's going to go here. And then I'm going to put this floral cluster right here at the end. Kind of bring it up to where the tag is. Then my title is going to be "This Is Me." And I think I'm going to try to tuck that in right here. Make it a part of that cluster. I have a little tag that I'm going to put up here for the date, along with this little heart piece right next to it. And kind of slightly overlap that on my photo because, again, creating those layers makes it all feel like it goes together. Then it's not a bunch of separate pieces. I also have another tag here that I'm going to slip underneath of my flowers, and I'm probably going to stamp on that tag. And then I have a small circle from the chipboard, and I'm going to add that up here to this heart and tag, just to create a nice little cluster of embellishments right here. Let's see if I can get that all to sit quite nicely together. There we go. So this is the basic layout that we're going to do. The only other thing that I'm going to add onto here is a stamp and some of these little sequin pieces around my clusters. And then you have plenty of room here if you want to add a block of journaling. If you want to either cut out a piece of paper and add some journaling here, you could do that. Bring in your cardstock. in any color really, but the lighter colors do work better, and add a little block of journaling there. So you can also bring in one of the journaling cards here and add that with some journaling. There's a lot of different colors here that you can pick from. You could go with something that already has lines on it, or the back of them are very simple black and white grids, and you could add in that with some journaling here as well. I might do that. I'm trying to decide which one to use, but I think I might do that. Maybe this green one? It's a lot of green. It's a lot of green. What about the blue? That is possible. Could cut off a small block of that. Or we could bring in this one. That could work too. So whichever one is kind of taking your fancy, or again, you could just flip it over and use the back. I think I might just do that, so I'm not competing too much with my photo. Just bring that in underneath, like right there, and add in some journaling. So I'm going to go ahead and start taping all of this down, and I'll be right back. Okay, so everything is now taped down. I've added my journaling, which talks about how important Easter was in my family. This is an Easter photo. I can tell that because I'm dressed up pretty well and have a little bunny. So it's likely this was from Easter. I don't actually know the exact dates. I'll look that up later. But I wanted to do a stamp on this tag. So I'm going to pull my layout out of the way so I don't make a mess on it. And then I'm going to go to the stamp. And I think I'm going to put this word loving on this. And I'm going to put it towards the end because this side's going to be tucked in under that floral. So once I know roughly where I want it to be, give myself a little idea there, I'm going to use my T-square ruler as a stamp block. Now, if you have a stamp block, feel free to use it. But I intended to make this class to where you don't need a lot of extra tools. I think it's important that when you're first starting that you don't get overwhelmed by all the special tools and you multi-use, multi-purpose as many of your tools as possible. So I'm going to bring out my ink. Tap that down very carefully. I did tap this onto my skin first because with new stamps they tend to have a bit of a sticky surface from manufacturing, and I find if I just kind of either rub it on my hand or stamp it on my hand before putting it on the ink for the first time, then I often get a much clearer image. Okay, got ink on that. Now I'm going to bring my little thing back. We're going to line it up best we can. Again, don't obsess too much, guys. Otherwise, you won't get anything done. That is my experience. So press that as evenly as possible. And then lift it up. Is it perfect? No, but I love it. I think it came out pretty cute. So we're going to tuck that under here and glue that into place. I do like to clean my stamps pretty quickly after using them. You can use a lot of special things, but I generally just use baby wipes. That may not be the best thing ever, but it is something I always have on hand. I have 5 kids, so there's always some sort of baby wipes around. They're just great for cleaning those sticky fingers. That is for sure. and stamps. So I'm going to put that away, and we're going to add that into our layout. And the last thing we're going to do is the fine embellishments with the sequins, which I've pulled some out. And we're just going to glue those around our clusters of embellishments. There you go. And we'll glue those around our clusters of embellishments just for some fine details to finish off our layout. Come back out. Okay. And make sure that is dry before we turn it over. And put tape on it. Because I don't want to smudge it. So maybe I'll just do this and hold that side of it. And then tuck it under right there. Okay, so now that's in place. We're going to add in our sequins. Sequins are a great way to add in tiny details for pretty cheap. Okay, so we've got some gold, we've got some white. Doesn't really matter which ones you choose. Just kind of add a few wherever you feel like sequins should go. I'm going to add one to this little tag. Don't worry about the glue oozing. It usually dries clear, so that's not an issue. I'm going to add a little black one on top, I think. There we go. Add black one up at the top. Because we don't have a whole lot of that black up here. I think I'm going to put this one right there. And these little bitty details really do make a difference. They really make your layout feel completely finished. Just like a painting needs fine details to look finished, so do layouts. Now sometimes I use mists and sprays to create a splattering type effect, but when you're beginning, I think you should stay away from mixed media. I think it's a good idea to play with paper first and then get into mixed media later. Just an opinion. But I find if you can get the details right and the techniques and the idea of scrapbooking with just paper, paper is an easier medium to use than mixed media. I think that makes it a little bit easier for beginners. It's hard to mess up with paper. You know, it really is. Paper is one of those materials that is very forgiving. We will introduce some new techniques as we go along, so each layout will have some newer techniques, a little more advanced, just a little, nothing too advanced, but just some newer techniques as we go along. Don't mind me fighting with these sequins, they're very small, which I love, but my nails are very short at the moment. Get on there, there you go. But just little bits and pieces here, that's all we're doing, just little accents. Let's put some here. That almost kind of blends in with the background. It's alright. We're going to add some other ones. All the sequins want to be on this layout. All of them do. Can't blame them. Add just a little drop of glue and pop it in place. I do like to do clusters of 3. I think that it is just a little bit more interesting. Add those on here too. You can join into the party. There you go. So there we've got our finer details in place. You can add more if you would like. I'm just going to keep this one fairly simple as a good example to y'all of a very simple layout. It's simple, but it's not boring. It's got lots of beautiful color. It's got some florals. It's got lots of patterns. I love patterns, and I don't think that basic and beginner equals boring. It can be just as interesting as the fancy layouts that you see others create without having to do a lot of special techniques at the beginning. So that's it for our first layout. I'm going to get my supplies together for the next one, and attached to this post you will see a list of what I used and a picture of this layout completed so that you can reference it while we're putting it together. Thanks so much for joining me. On to the next one.